And then also they had, during that same time, in July, they had the Militia Act and they had the what they call the Confiscation Act.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that was they would seize land and property from disloyal citizens, the supporters of the Union and the South, as well as the emancipation of their slaves that came under Union control. So the slaves that belonged to a rebel was basically free, and they gave power to confiscate slaves.
Mm-hmm.
So both of these acts were going on at the same time, the Militia Act and the Confiscation Act. So those dates of 1861, 1862, we throw around a lot of dates out here. So when the people watching, when they go and do their own homework, around the time of that Civil War, a lot of things was happening all at once to lead up to 1865.
That's correct.
You know,
you got to build those blocks to get to 1865.
Yeah.
So you don't just get that. And the first recorded act, May 23rd, and not act in voting, but I'm talking about physical, like act, something that was done. May 23rd, 1861, Baker, Mallory, and Townsend ran for their own freedom. So they ran the Union lines, and when they got there, Benjamin Butler made a decision not to return them to the Confederacy. That was key to the war, because the Confederacy was asking that they be returned under the fugitive slave law, but Butler said, you are a foreign nation. You no longer under our Constitution, and we are at war. Therefore, any property we seize, we get to keep. So you get the contraband of war. These men made a choice themselves to run for freedom, and then after on that side, many others began to run, and the Union found themselves with all these enslaved people showing up. And see, the thing about Granger that many people don't know, Granger was returning runaway slaves to the Confederacy.
This is Gordon Granger?
Gordon Granger
Granger
was returning. When runaway slaves would get to a camp where he was at, he would send them back, but Butler didn't do that. So Granger wasn't necessarily a friend to the enslaved. He was just following orders in 1865.
But just for context, to let people know, Granger was, when that order number 3,
General Order Number 3.
General Order Number 3 was signed, Granger is the person that's credited with sending the message to Galveston.
Yeah, he was here in Galveston. So on the southwest corner where we are right now, next door was the Osterman building. And the Osterman building is where Granger set up his Union headquarters on June 19, 1865. Union forces were already on the island. The island had already surrendered Texas in June 2nd. Granger came in June 13th. He got command of Texas. That was General Order Number 1. General Order Number 2, he set up his command, and under his command was a Major Frederick Emory. Emory had been an abolitionist and an editor of an abolition paper, and I believe he is the reason that we have the words absolute equality in General Order Number 3. So the first sentence ends with all slaves are free, and the second sentence begins with this involves an absolute equality, and Emory is the one that wrote that, not Granger.
And that's the general order that was read once Granger got here.
Yeah, so
he read it, he didn't write it.
Yeah, the general order was issued. There's no public record anywhere that Granger physically read it out loud to a group of people. So people think that.
See, it's almost related as if this guy came down on a horse.
Yep.
Like some Paul Revere type stuff. You know, the redcoats are coming. He's just
a savior.
Yeah. Hey, y'all free.
Yeah. And that's not what happened. Granger was not necessarily sympathetic to the enslaved people. He was just here. Grant didn't really like Granger. That's in this book, Juneteenth. Is written about by Ed Cotham. I know everybody's talking about Annette Gordon Reed on Juneteenth, and that's kind of a memoir of her family memories and things. Cotham's book is more research military, but he doesn't give a lot of credit to the USCT. He doesn't talk about them much. He talks about events and things that led up to Juneteenth. but we have to expand the narrative because in newspaper reports in July of 1865, a telegraph went out from Galveston on June 20th and was in the newspapers in July. And the thing when we're doing this research, you have to realize that news wasn't in the paper tomorrow. So the events of today on June 17, 2021, they already electronically posted online we information like that. So
we get it instantly.
Back then, you may find a story 2-3 weeks out after the event because the message traveled much slower to get it out. They had telegraphs, but it still took time. You had to typeset all the newspapers and put the letters in upside down and backwards and spell the words. That took skill, man.
One thing we talked about to touch on that when you were talking about hearing the conversations. And this Booker T. Washington, Up From Slavery, when he touches on hearing word of the Emancipation Proclamation, the enslaved blacks around that time were going to pick up the mail. They would listen in on the conversations, even if they couldn't read. They would listen in. Hey,
they was ear hustling.
Hey, word is coming down. They're gonna try to free them Negroes.
Yeah.
So they're coming back, delivering the mail, but stopping and letting the other brothers and sisters know.
Absolutely.
Hey, word is coming down. The
we always been able to get a word around.
Yeah.
You know how somebody knows something that.
Word of mouth is
word of mouth.
Word of mouth. That's the best mode of marketing and promotion. It's always been word of mouth. It's always been word of mouth.
So that we were talking about Granger and him not really reading the proclamation.
Was it more so he just like, I'm just doing my job?
That's all it was. I got to go over here to Texas and do this.
And tell these Negroes, basically, and in his mind, now he probably didn't say Negroes back then.
Yeah. Well, even in General Order Number 3, there are some restrictive instructions. The freedmen are advised to remain at their present homes and to work for wages. Therefore, they could not leave. The relationship changed from master-slave to employer-employee, and in many cases, in records, you read that they had to have a note from their employer before they could leave the plantation. Sound like a slave pass to me.
Still, yeah. It's
and I take it even further today. People don't realize we still have passes.
Oh yeah.
Driver's license. If you ain't got a driver's license, how you gonna move around? Yeah. It's a pass to be on the road.
And in some instances, to touch on what you're saying, they kept them there because of whatever the season was. They didn't want to lose that money.
Well, they didn't want to lose their labor.
Yeah, the labor.
They didn't want to lose their labor.
The sharecropping of what was going on at that time. Hey, they coming down giving this order saying that y'all technically free, but I still need y'all to work so I don't lose this money. You know,
it's all economics.
It's always been
it's economic exploitation of the masses for the benefit of an elite few.
Yeah, one thing I put in my notes, man, I just wanted to touch on in dealing with Lincoln, because a lot of times in school they have this ideology of Lincoln freed the slaves. It's a credit that comes with that. And
another savior kind of
that savior syndrome. So,
but he did do some things that were important. But that Emancipation Proclamation was really just kind of a war act that he was doing to weaken the South and to try to strengthen the North by letting those enslaved people that ran away come over and then putting them to work.
So one of the quotes in the Daily National Intelligencer, that's what they called it back then. This was 1862. This is one of the quotes from Lincoln. My paramount object in this struggle is to save the Union, and is not either to save or destroy slavery. His primary cause with that Emancipation Proclamation was to save the Union. And one of the things that was said was, hey, it's almost like white people shed blood, black people shed blood too. If we need them to win the war, grab them. Give them a gun.
Yeah,
let them fight.
Eventually, Frederick Douglass convinced him, give them a gun, let them fight.
If you're watching this on YouTube, man, hey, y'all, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. This is Gentleman's History Hour.